happening for me right now. And maybe I should roll up this window. I should have enough power to do that still. If not, I'll have to jump the car again, jump the van. I'll only need to roll up the driver's side window. Yep. Alright, and then as you can see, I got a couple of power draws that I don't like. I'll show them. So after rolling up the car window, I get these lights on and they don't turn off for a long time. Alright, and for some reason this only turns on, and that's no problem. I have to remember to open the car door, the van door. Alright, now it's off. Every time I turn this van off, I have to open up the door so that doesn't become a van draw. And that's assuming that this van can even start. I haven't even started it yet. I haven't started it since the jump, at least. So that was a stressful moment. So, let's see. Do you have a bed back there? Yep. I can lay down fully back there in the dark. And I got about 14 or 15 blankets now, including the sleeping bag. So I'm doing pretty good with that. I gotta say though, I'm waking up at night with a stomach ache. I haven't even looked into that in a long time. That's no fun. A burning in my stomach and a pain in the shoulder too. I wake up from that too. So I got two things that wake me up at night. Those and it's not cops. It's a sick stomach and it's a painful shoulder. So that's my future. Let's see. You need to eat more greens. Yeah, for the liver. I need to. I just. I guess I'm making a note that I have gotten a peppermint tea. So I had that today. It's been a while. I don't know if that's really gonna do much, but I've done it and I've recorded that. So we'll see what happens tonight if I wake up with another sick stomach. I'll have to admit I didn't wake up with sick stomachs in jail. Okay, it's the sick stomachs are back, and it's like the lifestyle in jail did not bring it about. The lifestyle in jail was bringing out the swelling in my tooth abscess, but it wasn't giving me sick stomachs, and they're back. So it's a bad habit that I have, and I thought I've been changing the habits, but it's not been enough, and I'm getting sick stomachs again at night and in the morning. It's not something that's normal. And I don't think it's a dirtiness issue. So I got to figure this out. I got to stop it. I'm overeating a lot because I just love to eat. I'm not cooking as much as I get. Well, you don't really get a lot of cooked food in jail. So got a little bit of a stress today with the car not starting. I blame the car security system, but it also did rain a lot, and I might have wires that are getting exposed to the water. It's raining inside the car, inside the van as well, on the driver's side, on the passenger side, and then the rear passenger area as well. And also the lights are getting discolored as well. There's some kind of a water pooling on the lights on the roof. I think everything should just probably be ripped out of this van. All wiring should probably go the way things are going. Everything in the rear should probably go. Anything that's a luxury. I've pulled several light bulbs, but that's just not enough. I'm not saving the van from dying. It wasn't even 24 hours. I arrived at, say, 5 p.m. I went to the laundromat to clean my newfound sleeping bags, and just I hung out the night, and then till today, through today, until about 5, maybe 24 hours. and then I go to start the van, and it wouldn't crank. It wouldn't turn on. Luckily, I wasn't too far away from a Harbor Freight, so I could just go there and spend $130 on this battery. And it suggests you don't start the vehicle unless it's over 50%. Luckily, off the shelf, this is at 69%. It was, let's say 68%. It was at 70% when I bought it, and then I used it to start the van, and it dropped down to 67%. And I might need to start this van again to leave the Walmart to go to my safe spot, and then I might need to use this again to leave my safe spot to go to the library, or I don't know. I gotta start I'm gonna have to use this several times a day until I can get that parasitic drain fixed. And I've been spending a lot of time asking AI questions about how to get this parasitic drain fixed, because it's not the alternator. The alternator would be more immediate. They're a live stream current draw. Uh, um, it's drawing right now. So this is a live stream while the van is going through a parasitic drain right now. This is it. I'm kind of scared to try to start the car by itself. I mean, I was able to jump it. I'm pretty sure I'll probably have to jump it again. Are you sure not the battery? Well, okay, if this started the car, okay. Am I sure about what? This started I needed this to get the car started. Okay. So it's come down to needing, I bought it out of desperation. Luckily, I was able to buy it from a local place. It's how to locate a parasitic draw. I know where the thing is. I know where the parasitic draw is. It's the car security system, and you can't hear it every time I hit the steering wheel. Every time the door. It's a shock sensor that's clicking, and that's drawing a fair amount of electricity. But I mean, I was in 20-degree weather, and it would start. Okay, so there's also the water factor. It's like a combination of security system and also the water issue. I don't think it's the cold. It's in the 50s now. So there's the water factors, and then there's the security factors as well. So I'm dealing with somebody has a jump pack. So I got a jump pack. Yeah, I had to spend money on that. And I gotta recharge it. I mean, I can kind of stay on top of recharging it. I tried to recharge this with another battery, this weaker one that only puts out 15 amps. Is that what it is? 15 watts? Maybe 15 watts. And that's low. It stopped charging. It wouldn't even bother charging. When it gets too cold out, this little battery pack is like worthless. I got a stronger one that does 30 watts, and that's says that it can charge a laptop at 30 watts. That does a little better in cold weather, but I didn't plug this car battery thing into that. Let's see. You could always return the charger. If I return it, then I'll be sitting with a dead van, and then I'll have no way to take off. Harbor Freight sells a battery cutoff switch. Yes, that's what I'm looking into a little bit. The Walmart here has it for $27, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to fix it. That's the thing. After this live stream, I need to go on to YouTube and learn how to do it. It's the AI told me that you should connect it to the black lead on the battery. So something, I'll need my tools. I need to be able to see, and I need those tools. I think I got the right tools to do it, maybe. But I'm thinking, at least, that's a very short term fix to just have something to shut off the battery directly. Open up the hood, shut it off, close the hood, and then go back and forth with that exercise. That would protect the battery. I want to protect the battery from all this draw. There's something in the column. Column is like a straight line up and down, I think, and then well, it could be sideways too, I suppose. See, to find a vehicle voltage parasitic draw, set the multimeter to measure DC amps 10A. Yep, 10A connected to in a series between the disconnected negative and the cable. Yeah, I just finally got a small screwdriver for my multimeter to open up the back so I could plug the battery in and then close the back. I haven't even plugged the battery in yet. So my multimeter, I finally got the small screwdriver to open it, because I was looking at Lowe's and they wanted to sell something for $10, like this pack of screwdrivers for $10. And I can come to Walmart and get two screwdrivers. They're the 0 size, and that's $3.50. I wasn't gonna pay $10 to Lowe's for their small screwdriver set. I asked AI about it, and AI suggested looking for eyeglasses screwdriver set. I tried looking for that, but I didn't see anything. But I was able to still. The size 0 is good. Size 0 is kind of large. I could have gone double 0, but that would cost me more money, and I don't want to pay that. With the car off and asleep, pull fuse one by one until the draw drops. That's the thing. The car alarm shock sensor doesn't have uh, a fuse. All right. AI suggests to look for a fuse, and I'll do that. I'll look tomorrow. I don't recall seeing it. It asked me if there's a box, and I'm like, yes. And it said, look for a fuse. I'll do that. Last time I was under there, I couldn't see anything. What I want to do is pull the panel from this kickboard here, and I want to figure out how to do that. Just if there's any hints on how to pull the kickboard so I have easier access to that box below. But I can access it still with the kickboard still there. I'd rather not have it be there, but I'll work around it if I have to. Let's see. Pull the fuses one by one. That's a little sketchy to pull fuses one by one. I did that with my Ford Focus to find the dashboard fuse that I would pull out every time the car was off. I think I replaced that fuse over the 12 years I was traveling with that car. I replaced that fuse once or twice. I wore out the fuse so much, pulling it out and putting it back in every time I turned the car off just to save the battery. I did that. I wore out the fuse from pulling it out and putting it in. That's the thing. I looked at the fuse box, and I don't see that little yellow clamp to pull out the fuses on this van. And I saw a picture showing that it was taped to the panel. So that's another thing I'm missing, is that little pinch thing for the fuses. I need to look into that. Razor blade. Yep, razor blades will cut things up. A remote cut switch will keep you from opening the hood. Yes, I saw that. You could have a remote for that. I only see the ones that you'd have to get out and put it on and turn it and all that in Walmart here. But yeah, there is something with a remote, which would be interesting. I'll have to see who sells that. What AI could find that, I'm sure. I only look for remote for that. But yeah, to kill the whole van just because of the security problem, which I believe it's the car security problem, KARR. I'm going to spell it for the transcripts, and I want to get to the source of the problem, which I mean, just by a lot of accounts, it's going to be the security issue. Um, but yeah, I do have the multimeter. I would like to test for power draw. You got to wait like 45 minutes for an accurate test. Not be in the car, not be in the van, not touch anything for 45 minutes for everything to settle in the van, and then do a test. Probably need the hood open already because it's a shock sensor. I only need to tap the steering wheel, and then the shock sensor clicks. That's all it does. That's the effect of this security system. It just makes this mild click when you tap something in the van. And I mean, that sounds like a power drain to me when it makes that noise every time. Aim high. Okay. Steering column, is that right? Check. Yep, I got a steering column. You could even try Googling your vehicle's car, make, model, and looking for parasitic draw problems. Well, I AI'd it on both ChatGPT and Google Gemini, and it sounds like, you know, a car security system is a big issue. This is the second time now my van has died. Okay, the first time I got some help and I bought a new battery, and now the second time I bought another new battery, not quite $200, not a van battery. So yeah, I might want to go to Napa. And then Napa's, yeah, it's not too far from the library. I could walk over there and show them my receipt, tell them I'm under warranty and that the battery died. Okay, and see what they say. The AI suggested a couple of things I found interesting. First, it said that maybe I could make contact with a shade tree or a mobile mechanic. Maybe the people who work at the auto parts center might know somebody who's a mobile mechanic. So I want to ask about that. I find that interesting. And then also, if I do the work myself, it suggested to have my work double checked by a professional. So that gives me a little confidence. You know, I don't have to do it and then hope I got it all right. All right, and the most sophisticated. Well, what are people saying here? It's butted in the main. What's butted in what main? Near, in, and around the steering wheel. Yeah, it's all below the steering wheel. This the box is below the steering wheel to the left, and it's got like 25, 30 different wires. They taught me to tap power from the ignition switch. Yeah, the ignition wire was cut in half so that they could connect the car security system. You could use another fuse to pull a fuse. I don't know how that technique works. That would be something to watch on TikTok. I've never heard of that before. I see a lot of different advice out there too. Power going to that. Power going to the. Yeah, that's the thing. Okay. Well, I want to take the power away from the car security system, but and what's weird to me is it's just like okay, AI is helping me figure out how to remove the car security system completely. Guys on YouTube have shown how to do it, and the hardest part is reconnecting my starter cable, the starter wire. All right, that's the hardest part. There's a mic and a GPS. Yeah, I don't know if my van's being tracked like that. I haven't really looked into car security too much. It seems kind of outdated anyway. I don't even know if they were using car anymore. You know, if you're not driving your vehicle a lot and getting that current, well, but it's still drunk. I mean, the van hasn't can't last 24 hours in 50-degree weather, 55-degree weather. Yeah, the van can't even last 24 hours in 55-degree weather in a rain. It can't last that long. I mean, that's ridiculous. If there's too much of a draw going on. It's not the alternator either. It's a parasitic draw, most likely coming from the car security system. It's as old as 2009. The dealer and his local tow company are spying on you. The dealer, I do have old paperwork from the dealer from 2009, so I do have. Oh, but it's kind of hard to get to right now. Yeah, I could list off who that dealer was. I think they're in San Diego somewhere. And that's 2000. They're watching me with 2009 technology. So, think give that some consideration on the chances of that happening. Let's see. Right? Yeah, you got to solder. That's a thing. Solder is a part of the sophisticated operation that goes into removing the whole unit. Okay, I I uh, I unclip all the wires and undo everything, and then when I have everything unclipped, what should be left is I'll have the box and all the wires in my hand, separate, and then after that's removed, then the real job comes afterward, and that's reconnecting the wire for the ignition. I'm told it's a 12 gauge wire and it's cut in half, and I have to know how to put it together. I don't just twist the wires together and put a cap on it and call it a day. Okay, it's not as easy as that. It's I've been warned against it on multiple and under multiple questions and under multiple answers. I've been warned about that. It has to be a really tight, secure fit. All right, solder, and I need to shrink a plastic around it so no water can reach it. Just clip a red wire that goes to the box that is making the noise, and boom. Yeah, it's something about the power, okay? AI didn't say the red wire. AI said the biggest wire, okay? So, but it didn't say clip. It didn't say. It said no cutting should need to be done. So undo the biggest wire that's tapped into the van in some way. It's used because this is an aftermarket unit that they had to go in and cut the starter wire, and then use all these little tap plug things that I can unplug. I could do piecemeal work right now, unplugging all various wires. Uh, but I want to get it right the first time. I want my van to be able to still start. And now, it could be a matter of whether I pulled the wrong wire or if the battery's dead. Now I don't know. I won't know. And right now all I know is that if the van won't start, it's because the battery is dead, not because I messed around with the box and the wires for the car security system. There is other stuff to link the wires. Yep, yeah, I don't intend to do any extra linking. No, no, I'm not doing any extra linking with the wires. They're either all off, or that one power wire is going to be, I'm going to look into that, just disconnect that, and then try to start the van, and then hope the van starts. But I'm not linking any extra wires together. It comes down to just the car alarm system using like 20 different wires to tap into the network of 20 wires in the van of all sorts of nature. It's a shock sensor, and somehow it's able to pick up signals, keep the electricity going to pick up signals for when the movement happens in any way. And then what it does after it's notified of a movement, I don't know. It just clicks. That's all I hear. It sounds faulty to me. 2009 technology. Was there even an iPhone out in 2009? There's a sensitive screw on the shock box. Turn it all the way down. Sensitivity screw. Yeah, that's a possibility. AI didn't tell me about that one. I don't think I have access to the Wi-Fi on this tablet. No, it cut off. Maybe I can ask about that. It's a sensitivity screw. I'm ready to go with checking that thickest wire and trying to pull that, but I don't recall seeing any sensitivity screws on the box, and I wasn't told anything about that. But I mean, AI answers questions directly. Yeah, okay, I'm not even connecting. Well, that's another question to ask. Oh, I'm connected. All right. So I was in ChatGPT. Okay, that's Google. Okay, I'll ask ChatGPT. I'll stick with the line of questioning. Let's see. Van issues. Let's see. Okay. So sounds okay. Let's see. Is there a sensitivity screw on the shock box? Is there a sensitivity screw on the shock? See, it doesn't matter if there's a sensitivity or not, though, if I can put it into valet mode. There's a valet mode that shuts it all off. Okay, so that's part of the thing that I wonder which mode am I in? I don't even know. But if it's not in valet mode, if it's in regular mode, then yeah, I guess turning down the sensitivity could help. Sensitivity screw on the shock box for car. All right. We'll just ChatGPT is taking a look. Stop taking everything apart. Your last car was stripped clean on the inside from taking. Okay, yes, most car shock sensors do have a sensitivity adjustment, but it depends on the exact unit. What to look for? On the shock sensor module, usually a small box near the alarm brain or steering column, a tiny screw, which I have, labeled things like sense, adjust, plus, minus, usually requires a small flathead screwdriver. Clockwise is more sensitive, counterclockwise less sensitive. If it's clicking when you tap the steering wheel, it's likely set too sensitive or the sensor is failing. Even if you turn sensitivity way down, a malfunctioning car system can still cause battery drain. The clicking alone means the module is powered and awake. Yeah. You can, it's, AI is like, you can, and they use italics for the can. You can turn the screw down as a temporary test, but if the battery drain is your main issue, disabling or removing car is the real fix. disabling or removing. I like the disabling parts, where I don't have to do any soldering of the starter wire, the 16 or the 12 gauge starter wire. Okay, if I want the AI, if I take a picture of the shock sensor box, the AI will tell me exactly where the screw is, and it'll confirm my specific unit has an adjustment. Some later ones don't. Oh, and then it assures me, and that gives you the good feelings, I guess, at the bottom. You're asking the right questions. This is almost certainly the culprit. So it's giving some good some good feelings, feedback on as part of the answer program. All right, so it's not obvious, just a simple button. No, it's saying that you just use a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver. There's no knob. But there's no knob on the car system. Ask AI. Go to AI and ask about the car security system if you want to learn more about it. So yeah. Oh, I gotta scroll up. Let's see. I saw your video of the box, and his screw is right on the front of it. See, I didn't even notice the screw. I'll have to go back in. So, lefty loosey. I got a lefty to reduce the sensitivity. Lefty, less sensitivity. All right, that's something to look into. But, I mean, I also want to look for that thick wire and pull it. What gets me is if I cut off the power to the shock box, I mean, I hope that doesn't disable the starter, because that would be a disaster. But I mean, I don't want to just pull the wrong wires. I don't want to screw it up for the starter not to start, because that's a big job. If I have to put the starter together, it's not an easy job, and it's something where I need practice on some other things before I do it on my own van. So I kind of need a little help with that. That's what makes me so nervous. It has a plus minus on it. Yeah, I'll have to look at it. I don't really have easy access at the moment. It's in a Walmart parking lot. I don't want to do any work in the parking lot. I must be one of your top viewers. I'm one of those that puts your videos on to fall asleep to. Something about your voice inflection or something. Well, that's great. I put people to sleep. Bayless or you or go-tos, no home. No home. You have no home? Maybe you could just replace the cable and not have to solder. Replace the cable. Yeah, I'm hoping that there's enough slack on the starter wire where I'll probably have to cut the ends a little bit so that I can bring the wires together better. But I hope I don't have to cut. I hope I don't, adding extra wire, I don't know. If you use too small of a wire, it'll start a fire. I don't know what happens if you use too large of a wire. So it's a sensitive situation here. I can't keep dealing with the battery dying. I know right now I can fall back on this and charge it at the libraries, but I still have to get out to start the van. I like the remote switch that kills the battery. I want to protect the battery. All this there's all these extra cables going to that positive terminal, and I'd like it just to be basic. I don't want any extra wires going there. That things can be disabled. I don't listen to the radio. I don't want that on at all. I don't need any power going to it. I got this anti-theft light that's flashing. I don't need that on. Uh, I'll have to look into things that could be drawing. But I think the aftermarket car security system is a big one, and it's got me a little stressed out. And AI is giving me a little reassurance. And well, now the viewer now who's told me about turning the shock sensor down, AI is saying, yeah, okay, that can help maybe a little bit, but yeah, I want to disable it ultimately because if it's glitching out. I mean, turning it down, I don't know if that's going to help a whole lot if it's glitching out because it's got a low setting. It doesn't have a dead set. It doesn't have a non-responsive setting. If you could turn it all the way down to being completely non-responsive, I doubt that's going to happen. They probably, what is the minimum setting? It might still be high enough to still be a nasty parasitic draw. Anyway, so yeah, the battery, it didn't start tonight, and I ran the van for a little bit, probably not long enough to charge the battery full enough. I'll probably have to jump it again. All right. And yeah, it's getting about to the time where I want to get to my hiding spot, I guess, for the night. Okay. I kind of wanted to end with talking about Conan the Barbarian here. Or is there anything else? I don't know what else to talk about with this starter thing. I probably have to jump start the van before I take off here, and it's frustrating to deal with. I was reading about Conan the Barbarian because I was in a town. I don't know. I forget the name. I guess I could ask what town that was. The writer for Conan the Barbarian grew up. I'm gonna ask what city did Robert E. Howard grow up in? He died in his early 30s. What city did Robert E. Howard grow up in? All right, I'll just throw that question out. Oh, and I'm still connected too. Oof. Yeah, it has to scroll down quite a bit because I wanted to go through some of that. All right. Cross Plains, Texas. I was in Cross Plains, Texas. Okay. Yeah, a small town. I was there because the city talked about it, put up some murals in his honor for being the originator of Conan the Barbarian. Fantasy stories published in a book in 1932. Global icon. So there's a little bit of a history before the movie came out with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, he died at age 30 by suicide. So his Conan the Barbarian stories, there weren't many of them. His mom suffered of tuberculosis and then died, and then he died. Then he walked out to his car, sat in the driver's seat, and shot himself in the head with a pistol after his mom died. Let's see, you spent the night in my wife and my town a while back last summer in Iron Mountain, Michigan. I didn't spend the night in your wife. Nope, I'm Iron Mountain. I've been to Iron Mountain. Yeah, I know Iron Mountain. They got the Bat Cave up there. You check out the Bat Cave where the bicycle trails are on the top of that hill. The old Kmart. Oh, I slept behind a Kmart. That's right. I stayed at a good fan and didn't go talk and bother you. Okay, yep. Yeah, people are so bothersome when they approach me. Oh, I can handle it. I'm advertising on the car. That's why I got advertisement on this van. It's not flashy. I kind of have it a little obscure. But yeah, I'll talk. Cops do that to me all the time anyway. I'm ready to talk. I don't know if I'll be going through Iron Mountain again. I will be going in the northern parts of that area for this summertime. So the writer of Conan, all right. So he killed himself at age 30 after his mom died. Okay, and then yeah, the Conan in the movies is a lot different than the books on different things. But then I thought what was interesting, I asked the AI, can you make a short Conan story in the style of Howard? So I asked the AI to write Conan the Barbarian story for me. I didn't even go into any detail. And for some reason, can you make up, I asked for a story, but Google Gemini decided to make a picture. All right, to drew a picture for me. And so I played with that a little bit. I'm like, okay, I didn't really ask for a picture. He can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend. Yep, that's a cool picture, but I asked for a short story. And this is with Google Gemini. And then it just repeated the picture. What happened to the oh, okay, all right. Here is a short, unfinished fragment in the Howard style. Okay. And then this is what gets me. I'll just preface it by saying that I asked for the short story with his style. Then I'm like, okay, now I'll turn it into the style of Mark Twain. Okay, now I'll turn it into the style of Tom Clancy. And then it just is spot on, changing the style of the author. And I don't know why, but I found it so amusing. Because I was trying to think of other authors that it could change the style of the story in. So this is his style. The torchlight flickered against walls of weeping basalt, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. Conan of Cimmeria gripped the hilt of his broadsword, his knuckles white against the blackened leather. The air here tasted of ozone and ancient, rotting things, the unmistakable stench of Stygian sorcery. Crom, he spat. ID time, it's about time for the ID. All right. He spat, his voice a low growl that echoed in the vaulted silence. A man should die under the sun, not in the gullet of a stone monster. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast, domed chamber. In its center stood a pylon of translucent green jade, pulsing with rhythmic, sickly light. Chained to its base was the Zamarian girl, her eyes wide with terror that transcended the physical. She was not looking at Conan, nor at the iron-bound doors. She was looking up. From the vaulting ceiling, a mass of shadow began to detach itself. It had no shape. The Cimmerian could name only a multitude of pale, lidless eyes and a sound like a dry parchment tearing. The girl's scream was cut short as the air grew freezing. Conan did not hesitate. He did not pray. With a roar that challenged the silence of the eons, he leaped forward, his blade whistling a death song. The steel struck the shadow thing, but instead of the bite of cloven flesh, there was only the sensation of plunging his sword into a freezing whirlwind. All right, now I asked the AI to finish in the style of Mark Twain. Okay, let's see. All right, so this is where it really gets ridiculous. The blade passed right through the creature, which was a considerable disappointment to the Cimmerian. It is a discouraging thing to swing 3 pounds of honest steel at a nightmare and have it come out the other side without so much as a thank you, or a smudge of blood to show for the effort. Conan skidded across the floor, his sandals sparking against the basalt. He hauled himself and looked at the shadow thing, which was now hovering in the air like a great soot-colored jellyfish that had forgotten its back to the ocean. Well, Conan grunted, if you won't bleed, perhaps you'll burn. He grabbed a wall torch and heaved it. The brand sailed through the air in a graceful arc, the sort of arc a man describes when he's trying to impress a lady but hasn't quite calculated the windage. It struck the translucent jade pylon with a dull thwack and tumbled into a puddle of green slime. The pylon didn't burn. It didn't even look annoyed. The Cimmerian girl, who had been screaming with a lung capacity that would have made a pipe organ jealous, finally took a breath. It is an elder god, she wailed. It demands a sacrifice. Conan looked at the girl, then at the shadow jellyfish, and finally at his useless sword. He had traveled 3,000 miles, fought 2 wars, and survived a desert trek on nothing but prickly pear and optimism, only to be told he was outmatched by a smudge of smoke. A sacrifice, is it? Conan muttered, reaching for his belt. I've noticed that gods, especially the elder variety, have a remarkable appetite for other people's property and a very poor grasp of basic arithmetic. He didn't charge again. Instead, he sat down on a nearby stone sarcophagus and began to fill a pipe with some particularly pungent Cimmerian leaf. If that thing wants the girl, he called out to the flickering dome, it'll have to wait until I've finished my smoke. I never could do business on an empty pipe, and I've found that even the most ancient horrors of the abyss are generally willing to wait 10 minutes if you don't act like you're in a hurry to be eaten. The shadow thing paused, its lidless eyes blinking in what looked very much like cosmic confusion. It had dealt with heroes and priests for 10,000 years, but had never encountered a man who treated an apocalypse like a slow afternoon at the post office. All right. Now I asked the story to be continued in the style of Tom Clancy. All right, and I'm sure everybody knows Tom Clancy. In a Clancy novel, Conan wouldn't just be a barbarian, he'd be a Tier 1 operator in a loincloth. Conan checked his 6. The basalt walls provided a suboptimal defensive perimeter, but the Cimmerian's situational awareness was operating at peak efficiency. He adjusted his grip on the broadsword, a custom-forged 36-inch blade of high-carbon Wootz steel, balanced to within a fraction of an ounce for a kinetic delivery that could penetrate standard-issue Cimmerian brigandine. Contact, 12 o'clock, Conan muttered into the humid air. The shadow thing designated Entity Alpha was hovering at an altitude of 10 feet. Conan analyzed the threat. It didn't have a visible thermal signature, which made his standard combat intuition difficult to calibrate. He knew from his time with the Free Companions that when steel fails to achieve a hard kill, you switch to environmental assets. He reached into his utility pouch and withdrew a small glass vial of naphtha, a volatile incendiary compound sourced from the Kaital refineries. It was the Hyborian equivalent of a Mark 141 flashbang. Palantides, give me a suppression arc, he barked, though the girl was far too deep in a state of neurogenic shock to provide fire support. Conan initiated a low crawl towards the jade pylon. The pylon was the hub, the command and control center for the entity's presence in this dimension. If he could disrupt the pylon's structural integrity, the Shadow Thing's tether would achieve a catastrophic failure. He counted down the seconds in his head. 3, 2, 1. He didn't just swing the sword. He executed a high-velocity lateral strike aimed at the pylon's structural weak point. A hairline fracture in the jade 4.2 centimeters above the base. At the moment of impact, he shattered the naphtha vial against the blade. The resulting thermobaric reaction lit up the chamber like a phosphorus flare. The Shadow Thing emitted a high-frequency screech, well above 20 kilohertz, as its molecular cohesion began to unzip. Target neutralized, Conan grunted, already scanning the room for secondary threats. We're RTB, returning to bar. Alright. The scene ends with Conan filing a 40-page after-action report to King Nemedides. Alright. Now, I asked the AI to continue the story in the style of Stephen King. Alright. Let's see. We leave the technical jargon behind and dive into gross out details. Alright. Conan felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his back, tracing the line of his spine like a frozen ladybug. His heart was thudding against his ribs. Thump, 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 thump. Sounding for all the world like a flat tire flapping on a dusty Sumerian back road. He looked at the Shadow Thing. It wasn't just a monster. It was a wrongness. It reminded him of a scab he'd once picked as a boy. The kind that oozes something yellow and smells like a copper penny left in a gutter. It was the color of a dead-end Tuesday in November. Come on, then, you son of a... Conan started, but the words caught in a throat that felt like it had been scraped raw with a rusty hawk blade. The thing from the ceiling, the it of this particular hole in the ground, rippled. It didn't move like a person, it moved like a bad memory. One of its pale, lidless eyes rolled towards him, milky and wet. It looked like a hard-boiled egg that had gone bad in the sun. The girl, the Zamarian one, was making a sound now. Not a scream anymore, but a low, wet bubbling. Conan, she's losing her grip on the steering wheel. He gripped his sword. The hilt was slippery with sweat and something he didn't want to think about. He thought of his mother's bread back in the village, the smell of the yeast and the way the crust crunched. And for a second, the terror retreated. It was a blue ribbon memory in a black ribbon world. I don't know what you are, Conan whispered, his voice cracking like dry kindling, but I know that everything that bleeds can be killed. And if you don't bleed, well, I guess we'll just see what else comes out of you when I unzip your middle. He stepped forward, his boots squelching in the green slime of the floor, on the floor. It felt like walking through a vat of spoiled okra. He raised the sword, the steel catching the sickly lights of the pylon. God is a mean man, his father used to say, but Crom is meaner. Conan lunged. As he did, the air filled with a sound like 1,000 dry locusts screaming in a wheat field, and a smell hit him, the smell of a wet dog that's been dead for 3 days in a locked closet. All right. The story pauses there as Conan enters a deadlight trance. Okay. All right. So now I asked the AI to continue the story in the style of John Grisham. All right. And even the AI gives a little background on John Grisham. All right. I'll just read it. To move into John Grisham's world, we have to trade the death song of steel for the litigation of the soul. The basalt chamber is no longer a tomb, it's a crime scene, with significant jurisdictional issues and a massive liability suit waiting to happen. Conan paused, his legal mind honed by years of navigating the treacherous maritime laws of the Vilayat Sea, whirring faster than his combat reflexes. He didn't just see a monster, he saw a flagrant violation of the Hyborian building code and a potential Class A felony. Hold it, Conan said, holding up a calloused hand. He didn't drop his sword, but he did adjust his stance to one more suited for a deposition. For a deposition, we have a bit of a procedural hiccup here. The shadow entity hissed, but Conan ignored the theatrics. He knew a stalling tactic when he saw one. He looked over at the girl, whose terror had shifted to a look of profound legal conclusion. Miss, Conan addressed her, his voice dropping into a smooth, persuasive baritone of a seasoned public defender. Did this entity provide you with a written notice of intent to sacrifice? Was there a waiver signed? Because from where I'm standing, this jade pylon represents an attractive nuisance, and the lighting in this chamber is well below the safety standards established by the Kothian Labor Board. The shadow thing began to descend, its lidless eyes blinking. Conan reached into his loincloth and pulled out a crumpled piece of parchment. A writ of habeas corpus he'd had a corrupt scribe in Shadizar draft for him for 3 silver pieces and a flagon of ale. I'm serving you, Entity Alpha. Or whatever you call yourself in the abyss, Conan declared, slapping the parchment against the cold jade of the pylon. You're in violation of the third-party beneficiary rule. The girl hadn't been read her rights, and frankly, your standing in this court is non-existent since you technically don't have a physical form within the local precinct. The entity hesitated. It was an ancient horror, yes, but it hadn't dealt with the paperwork. And in Grisham's world, the paperwork is the real monster. Now, Conan continued, leaning against the basalt wall and looking like a man who was ready to bill by the hour until the sun went down, we can do this the hard way, which involves a lengthy discovery process and several character witnesses from the Sumerian highlands who are very eager to testify about your prior acts, your prior bad acts. Or you can release the girl, vacate the premises, and we'll agree to a non-disclosure settlement that keeps the Stygian Inquisition out of your business. The shadow thing began to dissipate, not out of fear of the sword, but out of a soul-crushing dread of a protracted civil trial with no hope of a favorable verdict. Good choice, or good choice, Conan grunted, walking over to unshackle the girl. By the way, you'll be receiving my bill for the consultation. I don't work pro bono, especially not in dungeons. Conan then spent Conan then spent the next 3 chapters reviewing the girl's contract for any hidden loopholes. All right, now this one gets really weird. I asked the AI to please continue in the style of Lewis Carroll, who was the writer of Alice in Wonderland, so it gets really weird. To finish in the style of Lewis Carroll, we must abandon legal precedent and technical realism for a world of frabjous nonsense and mathematical whimsy. The basalt chamber becomes a looking-glass world where the monster is more concerned with etiquette than evisceration. The shadow thing began to fold itself inward, much like a giant silk umbrella that had forgotten how to be an umbrella and was trying to hand its hand at being a bad dream instead. "Oh dear," cried the girl, though her voice now sounded suspiciously like a silver bell ringing in a teapot. "If it doesn't eat me soon, I shall be quite late for the unbirthday party, and the jam will all be gone." Conan looked at his sword, which had turned into a very large, very sharp stalk of blue celery. He frowned, for he was a Cimmerian, and the Cimmerians find celery to be a very poor weapon for a serious brawl. "Excuse me," the shadow thing hissed, its pale eyes blinking in a sequence that was perfectly divisible by 7. "You are standing on the unless. One cannot fight a snark or even a boojum while standing on the unless. It simply isn't done." "I stand where I please," Conan growled, though his voice came out in a series of purple bubbles. "And I don't care for your eyes. They look like poached eggs served on a Sunday." The shadow thing sighed a smoky velvet sigh. "If you don't care for my eyes, perhaps you'd like a slice of pylon?" "A slice of the pylon. It's made of very important jade, and it tastes of tomorrow afternoon." The green jade pylon began to spin faster and faster until it looked less like a pillar and more like a very confused whirlpool. Conan realized with a start that the floor was no longer basalt. It was a giant chessboard, and he was a pawn who had accidentally wandered into... Oh, okay. Wandered, very confused, let's see. Giant chessboard, and he was a pawn who had accidentally wandered into the king's gambit without a proper tie. "The rule is," the girl shouted, now floating 3 feet off of the ground. "First the sacrifice, then the soup, then the trial, and then the introduction." "Nonsense," Conan bellowed, swinging his celery sword with a mimsy flourish. "The rule is, first the sword, then the plunder, and we'll worry about the soup when the cook is properly intimidated." He leaped towards the shadow, but as he moved, the air grew thick with a Jabberwocky smoke and the sound of 1,000 clocks ticking backward. The shadow thing began to recite a poem about a lobster who lost his shoes, and Conan found that it is very difficult to be a barbarian when the scenery is insisting on being a nursery rhyme. He swung the celery, wicker whack, but the shadow burst into a cloud of playing cards, each one screaming a different excuse for being late to work. The story ends as Conan wakes up in a field of daisies, wondering if the girl was a queen, a pawn, or merely a figment of some very bad ale. Okay, now I said, please continue the story in the style of George R.R. Martin, the guy who wrote the Game of Thrones. All right, and AI says, to finish the tale in the style of George R. R. Martin, we must shift the focus to the brutal realities of power, the intricate details of a heraldic lineage, and of course a very long description of a meal that Conan probably won't get to finish. The shadow thing didn't just loom, it exhaled the cold, damp breath of a winter that lasted a generation. Conan felt the ache in his joints, an old gift from a Cimmerian frost giant's maul. He knew the song the bards sang. The hero always cut the shadow and saved the maid. How the hero always cut the shadow and saved the maid. But the bards were liars who died of rot in the streets of King's Landing. In the real world, the hero usually died because his shoelace snapped or his squire was bribed. Crom, Cronin grunted, his voice less like grinding stones. He looked at the Zamorian girl. She was a Hyrcanian by blood, he realized now, the almond eyes of the steppe tribes, likely a bastard of the house of Akif, a valuable pawn in the great game, or just a piece of meat for a hungry god. My lord, she gasped, the iron collars chafing her neck until it was raw and weeping. The pylon, it is the heart. Smashing the stone ends the spell. Words are wind, Conan thought. He'd heard 1,000 girls say 1,000 things when the steel was out. From the shadows a man stepped forth. He wore the black silk of a Stygian priest, embroidered with the silver scales of Father Set. He looked like a man who enjoyed his lemon cakes and his secrets in equal measure. You are a long way from the north, Cimmerian, the priest said, his smile as thin as a mummer's promise. This girl is promised to the king of Stygia by treaty. Her death secures a marriage alliance that prevents a war. If you kill this shadow, you start a blood feud that will burn the Hyborian kingdoms to ash. Thousands will starve. Children will be eaten by their mothers in the streets of Kemi. Conan looked at the shadow thing. It was a terrifying entity, yes, but it wasn't the monster. The monster was the man in the silk robe talking about treaties. I don't care about your wars, Conan said. His stomach gave a traitorous growl. He hadn't eaten since the previous night, a greasy capon stuffed with onions and sage, washed down with a flagon of sour red wine that had given him the cramps. He missed that capon. And I don't care for your treaties. I came for the girl, and I came for the jade. The jade is cursed, the priest warned. Anyone who touches it loses their claim to their father's land. Their name is stricken from the annals. I have no lands, Conan said, stepping into a combat crouch, and my name belongs to me, not a book. He didn't charge with a heroic cry. He moved with a cold, murderous efficiency. He knew that in a fight, the man who thinks about honor is the man who ends up under the sod. He swung the broadsword, aiming not for the shadow, but for the priest's neck. Kill the master, and the dog goes home, he figured. But as the blade whistled through the air, the shadow thing didn't vanish, it grew. It tasted the bloodlust in the room and found it delicious. The night is dark, the priest whispered, his eyes turning as black as the basalt walls and full of things much hungrier than you, barbarian. The story ends as the priest begins a 3-chapter flashback about his grandfather's disgraced lordship. All right, I asked the AI at this point to continue the style in Michael Crichton. All right, and then it explains Michael Crichton a little bit. To finish the story in the style of Michael Crichton, we must abandon the supernatural and replace it with speculative science. high-end technology, and a cautionary lecture on the dangers of tampering with things we don't understand. The magic is about to get a very technical explanation. Conan froze. His pulse was 140 beats per minute, borderline tachycardic, but his mind was cataloging the anomalies with the cold precision of a systems analyst. The shadow thing wasn't a ghost. As it rippled in the torchlight, Conan saw the telltale prismatic shimmer of an atmospheric phenomenon. He'd seen something similar in a research paper from the University of Mesontia. It wasn't sorcery, it was a localized distortion of the space-time manifold, likely caused by the pylon. He looked at the jade pillar. It wasn't stone. The pylon, Conan said, his voice dropping into the flat, clinical tone of a man who had seen too many lab accidents. It's a prehistoric containment vessel, probably late Neopreterozoic. He moved closer, observing the rhythmic pulsing of the light. It wasn't glowing, it was cycling. Don't you see? Conan pointed with his sword, using the tip as a makeshift pointer. The jade is a ceramic matrix composite. It's a bioreactive housing for the colony of genetically engineered nanophages. They've been dormant for 10,000 years, waiting for a biological catalyst, a trigger. He looked at the Zamorian girl. The chains weren't just restraints, they were electrodes, feeding her neural impulses directly into the pylon's interface. They're using her amygdala, Conan whispered, the horror of technical implications finally sinking in. The shadow is a projected holographic construct giving physical mass through high-frequency acoustic levitation. It's a security system, miss. You're not being sacrificed to a god. You're being used as a CPU to run a prehistoric defense program. The shadow thing, the construct, suddenly lunged. Conan didn't swing his sword wildly. He knew that against a nanophage swarm, kinetic force was useless. He needed to disrupt the power source. He checked his chronometer. In 40 seconds, the pylon would reach peak resonance, and the localized vacuum would collapse, vaporizing everything in a 3-meter radius. It was a classic fail-safe mechanism designed by a civilization that had clearly mastered molecular engineering long before they mastered ethics. The problem with you people, Conan said, looking at the Stygian priest who was frantically tapping at a hidden keypad in the basalt wall, is that you're so preoccupied with whether or not you could summon an elder god, you didn't stop to think if you should. Conan didn't attack the priest. Instead, he jammed his high-carbon steel blade into the base of the pylon, specifically at the junction where the superconducting fluid was leaking. Short circuit. The blue sparks that erupted weren't magical. They were a massive discharge of stored electrical energy. The holographic shadow flickered, pixelated, and then vanished into a cloud of harmless ionized gas. Life, Conan grunted, unhooking the girl from the electrodes, finds a way, but usually it needs a man with a sword to help it along. The story ends with a 15-page appendix detailing the theoretical physics of jade-based superconductors. All right, so I should please continue, because I left off there. Please continue the story in the style of Now, I saw somebody mentioned a name. I don't know who H.P. Lovecraft is, but I'll find out. Please continue the story in the style of H.P. Lovecraft. Please continue the story in the style of H.P. Lovecraft. All right, we'll just see what comes up. Doesn't take long. To finish the story in the style of H.P. Lovecraft, we must descend into a world of cyclopean architecture, adjectives of cosmic dread, and the crushing realization that humanity is but a tiny, insignificant speck in a cold, hostile universe. A cold, clammy perspiration, the likes of which I have never felt in any sane corner of the earth, broke out upon Conan's brow. The basalt walls were not merely stone, but some blasphemous, non-Euclidean substance that seemed to curve in directions his Sumerian mind could not and should not comprehend. Crom, he whispered, but the name felt hollow, a puny human sounding echoing in a vault built for things that had thrived when the earth was still a molten, screaming infant. The shadow, the shadow thing did not merely descend, it manifested. It was a gelatinous, iridescent mass of protoplasm, a cacophony of lidless eyes and vestigial mouths that sucked and gibbered at the very air. It was a Shoggoth thing, a servitor of the great old ones, summoned from the black pits of Yuggoth by the pulsing, sickly luminous of the jade pylon. The girl's screams had dissolved into a rhythmic, guttural chanting, a language of wet, slushy consonants that no human tongue was ever meant to articulate. She was no longer a victim. She was a vessel, a doorway through which the outside was pouring in. Conan raised his blade, but for the first time in his life, the cold weight of the steel offered no comfort. He realized with the soul-shattering clarity that his muscles, his panther-like speed, and his indomitable will were but the antics of an ant beneath the heel of a titan. The creature before him did not hate him. To hate is a human emotion. The thing simply was, and its mere presence was a violation of all known biological laws. From the pylon, a sound began to emanate, not a sound heard with the ears, but a vibration felt in the very marrow of his bones. It was a piping, monotonous whistle, a flute song from the center of the ultimate chaos, where the blind idiot god Azathoth gnaws hungrily in the dark. Conan did not charge. To charge was to acknowledge that victory was possible, and the Sumerian now knew the terrible Stygian truth. Victory was an illusion of the civilized mind. He looked into the multitude of lidless eyes and saw there the end of all things, the freezing of the suns, the death of the gods, and the ultimate silent triumph of the void. His mind mercifully began to fracture as the first of the thing's gelatinous tentacles touched his skin. He felt a strange, ecstatic numbness. He was no longer a king, a thief, or a barbarian. He was merely a witness to the unutterable. The story ends with the discovery of Conan's diary, found years later by a terrified archaeologist who promptly burns it and flees to a sanitarium. What about, I don't like Anne Rice. I'm not a big fan of Anne Rice, but how about continue the story, continue the story in the style of... I can only think of Anne Rice at the moment. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot of authors out there. I'd have to like look up a list and just pick from a list more than anything. um, yeah, there's George Martin. Tolkien came before George. Oh, there's a click. I just smacked something. Um, I'll type in Anne Rice. Let's see. Is there anybody else? Anybody else I can think of? Uh, yeah, so you got like Dr. Seuss. That would be kind of crazy though, if I were to finish in the style of Dr. Seuss. But I'll go with Anne Rice. This will get nuts. To finish the tale in the style of Anne Rice, we must trade the death song of steel for a lush, sensory-drenched exploration of immorality, forbidden desire, and the exquisite agony of the soul. Finished in the style of Eminem, that would be interesting, I suppose. The basalt chamber is no longer a tomb, it is a sanctuary of tragic beauty. Oh. Conan felt the air thicken, turning into something heavy and sweet, like the scent of crushed lilies and old spilled wine in a sun-drenched cathedral. The shadow thing did not merely loom, it unfolded with the slow, deliberate grace of a velvet shroud. It was a being of ancient silken shadows, its eyes glowing with a pale violet light that spoke of centuries spent in the exquisite loneliness of the abyss. Crom, he whispered, but the name sounded coarse, a vulgar intrusion into a space that demanded only silence and the soft rustle of lace. He looked at the girl. She was no longer screaming. She was bathed in the pylon's emerald glow, her skin turning to the color of fine, translucent porcelain. A single drop of blood, crimson, vibrant, and achingly beautiful, slid down her throat. To Conan, it looked like a ruby lost in a sea of milk. He felt a sudden sharp pang in his chest, not of fear, but of a dark, intoxicating hunger. The shadow thing spoke, its voice a melodic thrum that vibrated against his skin like the touch of a lover. Do you not see the vanity of your steel, Cimmerian? I really can't stand Anne Rice. Oh my god. Alright, I thought I might just end it right there with I can't read anymore of what she writes. uh Hmm. Ugh. Yeah, I'm not able to think. I know there's just so many authors out there that have their own unique style. Let's see, Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah. I want to focus on continue the story in the style of Edgar Allan Poe. I want to do it with authors, not rap artists. Continue in the style of Edgar Allan Poe. Continue in the style of... Okay, to conclude our tale in the style of Edgar Allan Poe, we must abandon the barbarian entirely and replace him with a man possessed by a singular, morbid obsession. The basalt chamber is no longer a physical place, but a sepulchre of the mind, heavy with the scent of opium and the weight of an inescapable hereditary doom. Deep into that darkness peering Long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming, dreams no Cimmerian ever dared to dream before. The basalt walls, damp with the noisome effluvia of uncounted eons, seemed to lean inward, a claustrophobic architecture of despair that whispered of a red death, long forgotten by the sunlit world. Crom! I shrieked. If indeed it was a shriek and not the rattling gasp of a soul already forfeit to the pit. But the name of my grim god fell leaden and dull, like a heavy coin dropped into a stagnant pool. The shadow thing did not merely descend, it drifted, a ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of the psyche, its thousand lidless eyes blinking in a slow, torturous rhythm that matched the beating of my own frantic, telltale heart. Thump, 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 thump. The pylon, that hideous translucent shaft of jade, glowed with a light that was not of the spectrum of men, but a phosphoric radiance such as one finds upon the putrefying corpses of the unburied. The girl, the poor lost Lenore of this subterranean vault, lay white and still. Her eyes were fixed upon the ceiling with a vacant, glazed intensity that spoke of a mind utterly unseated by the specter of the sublime. She was not a sacrifice, she was a metaphor, the fragile beauty of the world being consumed by the encroaching, irreversible shadow of the grave. Prophet, I cried, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil. I raised my sword, but the steel felt as heavy as the lid of a leaden casket. I saw then with a horror that froze the very marrow of my bones that the jade pylon was not solid. No, it was a clock, a vast emerald timepiece, and each pulse of its light was a second of my life being ticked away into the nevermore. The creature reached out with a vaporous, elongated finger, and as it touched my brow, I felt the fever called living finally begin to break. It was not the end of a fight, but the conclusion of a poem, a dark, melancholic stanza written in the blood of my ancestors. I did not strike, I did not flee, I simply fell prostrate as the pylon shattered with a sound like the fall of the house of Usher, burying my barbarian pride beneath a mountain of green, glowing dust and the eternal mocking silence of the tomb. The story ends with the narrator being buried alive, still clutching a single raven black feather. Yeah, that was a weird style. Edgar Allan Poe is a weird style. That's amazing. All right. Yeah, there's so many weird authors out there. They put things together in their own unique ways, put words together, and got such a history that the AI can pick up on their style and recreate it in any way you want. I can't. I could just ask the AI to choose a style, or what's a good style that could break from all the past styles that I've written or that I've read off. Let's see. There's a Leon Uris. Uh-oh. I have never heard of that one. Continue the story in the style of Leon. I didn't even. Let's see. Uris. Yeah, I'm not an author. Uris? Okay. Of Leon Uris. It looks like an S. And this is with Google Gemini. To finish the story in the style of Leon Uris, we must pivot to the sweeping epic scale of a people's struggle for survival. The basalt chamber is no longer just a dungeon, it is a flashpoint of history, and Conan is the rugged, battle-hardened leader of a resistance that refuses to be broken by the weight of empire. Okay. Conan stood his ground, his legs planted like the roots of an ancient cedar on the slopes of Mount Gazant. He He looked at the shadow thing and felt the collective weight of 10,000 years of Sumerian suffering pressing against his shoulders. This wasn't just a monster. It was the personification of the tyranny that had tried to crush his people since the dawn of the Hyborian Age. "You've had your day in the sun," Conan said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp that had barked orders at a dozen partisan units from the Westermark to the border kingdom. "But the sun is setting, and the people are waking up." He looked at the girl Tamara. She was a daughter of the steppes, part of a fierce, proud lineage that had seen their villages burned and their children taken. Yet they had never bowed. Even now, chained to that God-forsaken piece of Stygian engineering, there was a spark in her eyes that no sorcerer could extinguish. It was the Exodus spark, the look of a person who would rather die on her feet than live on her knees. The shadow thing began to swell, a dark tide of oppression, but Conan didn't flinch. He reached into his belt and pulled out a jagged piece of flint, a relic from the old country passed down from his grandfather. It wasn't magical in the way the priests understood the word. It was magical because it represented the grit and the dirt and the blood of 1,000 generations who had refused to quit. "Tamara," he shouted, his voice ringing out with the authority of a man who had led a breakout from a dozen prisoner of war camps. "On my mark, you pull with everything the ancestors gave you." The Stygian priest stepped forward, his face a mask of imperial arrogance. "You are one man, Cimmerian, a stateless wanderer. You have no army, you have no flag." Conan smiled, and it was a grim, terrifying sight. "I have the dirt under my fingernails and the memory of every man you've ever hung. That's army enough." He didn't just lunge, he executed a coordinated assault on the pylon's structural integrity. He drove the flint into a seam in the jade with the force of a man striking a blow for every oppressed soul in the Hyborian world. The pylon didn't just break, it shattered through under the moral weight of the rebellion. As the shadow thing began to dissolve into the mist of forgotten history, Conan grabbed Tamara and pulled her toward the light of the tunnel. "Move," he barked. "We've got a long march ahead of us and a new nation to build, and Crom help any man who tries to stand in our way." The story ends with a 600-page historical overview of Sumerian migration patterns and a map of the newly liberated territories. You know, this is an interesting author. He's very into social movements and all that. That's interesting. You can apply it to Conan the Barbarian. You know, what about some like a really romantic author or something? Maybe like something I can ask. See, I'm on Google Gemini, but I can go to ChatGPT and do a new chat here. Who's the most famous romantic author out there? I'll just ask that. Who is the most famous romance? Because yeah, I don't see any romance authors. Who's the most famous romance author? Maybe like Dr. Ruth. How about let's do it in the let's. Dr. Ruth has a lot of stuff that she's put it together. Continue the story in the style of I forget her first name, Dr. Ruth. See if the AI can pick up on who that is. To finish her saga in the style of Dr. Ruth Westheimer, we must pivot from the clash of steel to the joy of communication. We leave the grit behind for a cheery, frank, and very diminutive look at the intimacy of the situation. No, Conan, put down that big heavy sword for just one little minute. That's like how she responds. You are looking so tense, and your blood pressure, I can tell just by looking at those muscles, is too much high for a man of your age. Conan blinked. The shadow thing was still there, looming and scary, but suddenly he felt like he was being lectured by a very small, very energetic auntie who reached only to his belt buckle. And she wagged a finger at the shadow entity. You are being very, very naughty. This is not how we treat a guest in our subterranean chamber. You are using fear to get what you want, and I am telling you right now, that is not good sex. Intimacy must be based on mutual respect and consent, not on glowing green pylons and ancient curses. The shadow thing hissed, but it looked a little embarrassed. One of its tentacles curled up sheepishly. And my dear, she said, turning to the Zamorian girl with a warm, grandmotherly smile. Oh, man, I didn't really want Dr. Ruth to be entered into the story so much. All right. You are looking so frightened, but we must talk about these. But that's her style. That's how she writes, I guess. We must talk about these chains. If you are using them for a little bit of role play and you both have a safe word, then that is wonderful. Enjoy yourselves. But if you are being held here against your will, then we have a very big problem with the communication in this relationship. Conan looked at the pylon. It wants her soul, Doctor. Oh, phooey. It wants connection, Conan. It's been stuck in this basement for 10,000 years. It's lonely. It doesn't know how to express its needs. Now what I want you to do is to put away that sharp blade. It is a very impressive phallic symbol. Yes, we see it. And I want you all to sit down and talk about your feelings. She looked up at the towering barbarian and the cosmic horror with a twinkle in her eye. Because remember, everyone, she chirped, no matter if you are Sumerian, a Zamorian, or a nameless Shoggoth from the pits of the abyss, you deserve to have a healthy, happy, and very active emotional life. Now, Conan, give the monster a nice, respectful nod, and let's see if we can't find a way to share this jade pylon that makes everyone feel good about themselves. Get plenty of sleep and be good to each other. Bye-bye. The story ends with Conan in the Shadow Thing attending a weekend retreat on conflict resolution. What about a really good horror author? I know that there's a Czech. I always thought the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was pretty good. I don't want not Stephen King again. Wrote about a famous Louisiana John Kennedy Toole. Oh, I could try him. Okay, please continue the story in the style of John Kennedy Toole. Yeah, I'm not familiar who that is. To finish the story in the style of John Kennedy Toole, he wrote Confederacy of Dunces. We must transform Conan into a flatulent, overeducated, and deeply offended medieval slob. The basalt chamber is no longer a sight of horror, but a source of immense personal inconvenience. Conan let out a resounding wet belch that echoed off the basalt walls with the authority of a cannon blast. He adjusted his loincloth, which was far too tight around his expansive girth, and glared at the Shadow Thing with a look of profound intellectual disgust. Oh my God, he wheezed, his voice a strained, high-pitched New Orleans drawl. The geometry of this vault is an affront to any civilized sensibility. It is utterly lacking in theology and geometry. I am beginning to feel my pyloric valve closing in protest of this entire tawdry spectacle. He reached into a stained leather satchel and withdrew a Big Chief tablet and a stubby pencil. I shall have to document this in my journal. The Stygian authorities must be notified of the appalling lack of ventilation in their dungeons. It is a crime against humanity, or at the very least a crime against me. The Shadow Thing loomed, its tentacles quivering. Do not hiss at me, you preposterous globule. Conan snapped, waving a meaty hand dismissively. You are nothing but a manifestation of a decadent and degenerate age. I suspect you don't even have a steady job. Probably some sort of beatnik entity drifting through the abyss without any sense of propriety or traditional values. He looked at the Zamorian girl, who was weeping in her chains. And you, stop that caterwauling this instant. Your lack of stoicism is causing me a migraine of gargantuan proportions. If I am to rescue you, I must insist on a certain level of decorum. I have half a mind to leave you here and return to my room to work on my manifesto regarding the lack of decent pastries in the Hyborian world. The jade pylon pulsed with an emerald light. Conan squinted at it, his eyes filled with a suspicion. That light is much too bright, he grumbled, leaning against a damp pillar that groaned under his weight. It's giving me a flare-up of my nerves. I crave a Dr. Nuts and a long nap in a darkened room, away from the prying eyes of cosmic horrors and the underdressed maidens. My mother was right. I should have stayed in Cimmeria and opened a small, respectable shop for the sale of medieval weaponry. Instead, I am trapped in the basement with a glowing rock and a creature that looks like a discarded piece of wet liver. He swung his sword, a rusty notched thing he used mostly for opening stubborn cans of pork and beans, and accidentally clipped the corner of the pylon. The jade shattered into 1,000 tiny, insignificant pieces. There, are you satisfied? Conan huffed, his face turning a dangerous shade of magenta. The pylon is broken, the shadow is dissipating, and my valve is in such a state of agitation that I may be forced to lie down on this filthy floor for the remainder of the afternoon. I hope you're happy. You've ruined my day entirely. The story ends as Conan begins a 3-hour lecture on the superior social structures of the early Middle Ages while the girl slowly unshackles herself. How about the style of William Shakespeare? I never tried that one. Continue the story in the style of William Shakespeare. It turns into a play. To finish the scene in the style of the Bard of Avon, we must elevate the barbarian's grunts to iambic pentameter and transform the basalt chamber into a stage for a grand tragic soliloquy on the nature of fate and the hubris of man. Oh my God, this is Shakespeare only wrote in a weird way. I don't know if I can read this. Conan says, "Stay the gelatinous and smoky fiend. Thy gelatinous and smoky fiend, thinkst thou to cow a heart of Cimmerian oak with these thy phosphorus and sickly glares? By Crom, the very air doth choke with pox, and this dark vault, like to a glutton's maw, doth seek to swallow up the light of day." He gestures towards the jade pylon. "O thou green-eyed monster of the earth's deep womb, pulsing like a fevered pulse in a dead man's wrist, art thou the king of shadows, or but a dream distilled from vapors of some Stygian wine? Look how the maid, a lily trapped in weeds, doth weep her pearly tears upon the stone. Fear not, fair damsel, though the stars fall down, and hell itself doth gape to sup on us. This steel, this cold, ungentle minister, shall write thy freedom in this demon's blood." The shadow, in a voice like the rattling of dry bones. "Conan, thy breath is but a summer's sigh, thy sword a needle in the hand of time. I was before the mountains learned to speak, I shall be when thy bones are white as ash. Then let the curtains," Conan says, "then let the curtains fall if death be near, if he'll find me not a shivering in the dark, but upright with a jest upon my lips, and blood upon my hands. Out, out, brief candle of the sorcerer's art. Thou art a tale told by a Stygian idiot, full of green light and fury, signifying nothing." He strikes the pylon with a mighty blow. A sound of thunder is heard. The pylon shatters. So cracks a noble jade. Now darkness, sleep, the rest is silence, and perhaps some gold. The scene ends with a funeral procession and a flourish of trumpets. Wow, that was a weird style. All right, what else do we have? Anything? Which direction? I could kind of go for a comedic direction in some way. Oh yeah, there is Don Quixote. I've heard of that one. You think? Yeah? You got his name there. Oh, okay. Don Quixote is, I read a little bit of Don Quixote, but not the entire thing. Continue in the style of, and then that was Miguel de Cervantes, in the style of Miguel de Cervantes. To conclude our history in the style of the illustrious Miguel de Cervantes, we must view the barbarian through the lens of a chivalric romance gone slightly awry. Conan is no longer a mere mercenary. He is a knight errant of the wasteland, possessing a grave dignity and a penchant for long-winded speeches regarding the nobility of his profession. Scarce had the sun's golden rays retreated from the world, leaving the wretched cave in a gloom as profound as a scholar's melancholy, when our noble Cimmerian, the flower of northern chivalry, addressed himself to the quivering phantom before him. Halt, thou misshapen churl, thou monstrous collection of ill-gotten vapors, Conan cried, brandishing his blade with a grace that would have put the knights of Amadis to shame. Knowest thou not that it is a grave offense against the laws of knight errantry to detain a damsel against her will in a dwelling so lacking in proper upholstery and Christian comfort? The shadow thing, which understood as much of chivalry as a goat understands of Greek grammar, merely hissed and undulated in a most ungentlemanly fashion. Dost thou mock me with thy silence? Conan continued, adjusting his loincloth as if it were the finest silken mantle of the Grandi of Spain. Perhaps thou art under the impression that I am some common rogue or a base mechanical. I tell thee, thou spectral peasants, that I am a righter of wrongs and a redresser of grievances, and though my squire, a lazy youth of no particular lineage, hath seen fit to remain in the tavern with a flagon of cheap wine, my arm alone shall suffice to topple thy emerald castle of deceit. The girl, hearing these words, wept anew, for she perceived that her rescuer was perhaps as touched in the head as the monster was lacking in bones. Fear not, O paragon of Cimmerian beauty, Conan proclaimed, for though this jade-built pillar gloweth with the fires of the pit, it is but a trifle compared to the burning fire of justice that consumeth my breast. I shall smite this pylon as if it were a giant of the windmills, and though I be bruised and battered by the falling shards, I shall count it a small price for the honor of thy deliverance. With a cry of Crom and victory, which he uttered with a voice so sonorous it might have been heard in the deepest valleys of the Sierra Morena, he launched himself at the jade. The steel met the stone with a sound like the breaking of 1,000 lutes, and the enchantment vanished as quickly as a promise made. But fortune, Conan remarked, picking a shard of jade from his ear, is ever a fickle mistress. She leadeth us into dungeons only to show us the way to the stars. Now let us find a goat's herd's hut, for I have a sudden and most unchivalric craving for a piece of cheese and a crust of bread. The story concludes with a promise of a second volume, which the author assures us will be even more entertaining than the first. All right, yeah, I think I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna try to start this car and try to start this van and see what happens. I've waited a long time. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go to a sleep spot. I've had some naps today, so. All right, I'm gonna start. Let's start this van. Let's see what happens. Oh, look at that. Okay. Well, that's good. All right, strong start. That allows me to hold off on using the battery until in the morning tomorrow now. So save some life there. So I'll be able to get going in the morning at least, without a little risk. Get over to the library. Probably have to move twice. But I gotta work on getting this parasitic draw taken care of. It is such. It's my biggest concern about this van so far, or right now at least. So I'm gonna stop this live stream.